Whoa, that's strange. Hello, friends. I've got a very strange thing happening here on my... Let's try that again. Phooey. Friends, I'm going to just shoot. I'm going to fly blind here for a little while. I don't have my normal monitor. Evidently somebody, some foolish person, can't imagine who it could have been, left my iPad turned on. Now that's pretty common practice for me. Left it turned on all day, but the plugger inner power cord had come unplugged. That is not normal for me. I usually do leave it turned on and plugged in, but alas. So I can't watch your comments. I'm so sorry, and I only discovered this after I scheduled the broadcast. Anyway, hello, my name's Dan. And as maybe you saw by the title there, I'm doing an unexpected layer. I don't normally do yet another dark detail layer at this stage. I go straight to final edit, but as you can see, I got so carried away with my wonderful fuzz layer last night, which, by the way, somebody mentioned, isn't that the same or as scumbling? And the answer is yeah, absolutely, yes. The manner in which I was applying the paint is indeed, it's called scumbling. Yes, exactly. I'm sorry I didn't think to mention that. I'm just focusing on the function of that layer rather than the name of the technique, but I should have mentioned that. Yes, what I was doing yesterday was plain old-fashioned scumbling. Thank you for mentioning that, whoever that was. Ultramarine on my brushes. And as you can see, I'm being careful not to be too careful, right? Have you heard me use that expression before? Be careful not to be too careful. I say that to my students all the time. The magic is in the mess. I don't think I talked about that last night for a while. All right, let's switch colors a little bit. I'm going to add some dioxazine violet to that color, just for no reason other than variety of color. Before I started, so earlier today, I did the scumbling, the fuzz layer last night and broadcast. You can go back and watch me do that if you care to at all. And then this morning sometime, let me zoom in here so you can see maybe a little bit. There we go. Hello, Jane. And hello, Artist Ross. What fun. Okay, looks like my monitor is working now. Anyway, I did pencil. I did a bunch of pencil. I really had fun. Uh-oh. My monitor's gone bad again. Anyway, I won't spare you the details. Normally I use an iPad, but as I said a little while ago, some silly person left the iPad turned on and the power cord unplugged. So now my iPad is dead, and I didn't discover that till after I started broadcasting here. A bit too much blue right here. I have almost made a practice of, especially late in the painting process, and I say almost, I'm not terribly consistent, but I'm becoming more consistent little by little. I've almost made a practice of, every time I put down a mark with a brush in a traditional manner, of course, I'm calling this traditional, of course, so, stretching the bounds of the word a little bit, I suppose. Anyway, I've almost made a practice, so it's slightly inconsistent, of after putting down a mark with a brush, coming back and scratching it, very often with the handle of a brush, other times with a rag, and I'm finding that that is a good practice. I wish I did it a little more consistently, but it's still on the way to being a consistent practice. But I do think that would be a good practice for most people to add to their painting repertoire. That is, after you make a mark, remark it, do something to it, mess it up in some way. I think many people, their paintings would be improved by redo this dark detail layer right here. I don't want to sort of put my head down and just paint manfully charge forward. What's the expression? Anyway, it's slipped my mind. But head down, plow ahead. Which is, by the way, I don't know if you know that, at least for me, that's really easy to do. Just kind of turn off brain and keep painting, which is not a good thing to do generally, and I have fallen into the trap of doing it more than once in my career. I went to bed last night and was thinking about, because I painted quite late in the evening, and I went to bed kind of with this painting rolling over in my mind and thinking about the fuzz layer. And indeed, I did a lot more. I shouldn't say a lot, to be more precise. I did quite a bit more than normal. A little bit more than normal, at least. Anyway, and I went to bed thinking, oh man, I think I just covered up. I was laying in bed, you understand, I wasn't looking at the painting. But in reflecting on it, as my eyelids were growing heavy, I thought, I think I just covered up all those beautiful layers that I did, preliminary layers in acrylic. I mean, what was the point of doing all those layers if I'm just going to cover them up? Anyway, I was very happy to see when I got up this morning and came back and looked at the painting, I was relieved to discover, oh, no, that really wasn't the case. So let me pick you up for a minute Hang on, let's go to wide angle. Before I continue, I want you to see up close. And how close can I get here? Right now, your lens is about 3 inches from the canvas. And I don't want you to see what the object is or what the subject matter is. I really just want you to see the texture up close and see the layers. Layers and layers and layers. Well, there's a car, you can recognize that, all right. So I'm actually quite happy. There's this nice little accidental blush of kind of a peach color right there on the edge of that porch. That's kind of nice. This tree's kind of nice. Of course, some of that I just did. Anyway, as I said, when I came out and looked at it this morning, after my alarming midnight reflection, I said, oh, no, I didn't ruin it. I didn't cover it a lot. I pushed it back, of course, with the scumbling, with the fuzz layer. Of course, that's easy to see. But it's still visible. That's the main, that's the important thing. If all the underpainting was indeed rendered invisible, then indeed, then all the underpainting would be a waste, would have been a waste. But it is not. You can, when you look at the painting, and I'm not sure how well you were able to see it, but when you look at the painting in person, you are indeed able to see layers and layers, and you do get the impression. Forgive me, I know I'm standing right in your way, but I can't be helped. I have to stand here for this little bit. You really do get the impression that you're seeing layers and layers and layers of color and texture. And to my eye, that's a very pleasing effect. In fact, I haven't said this in a long time. I made the observation a long time ago about my approach to painting with all the layers of acrylics and then the layers of oil, that one of the best words to describe the effect is patina. And even more specifically, my paintings have almost an antique look about them. Maybe more than, and I don't mean like that they're because they're painted in an old style. Not at all. I don't think they are at all. But just the texture itself is, patina is a good word. It just has because there's so many layers, it has an old feeling. Anyway, and I find that I find it to be a pleasing effect, to be able to feel like you're looking deep into the paint. Let's finish up here. I'm nearly finished with this unexpected layer, which I'm calling an additional dark layer, which means I am being creative. I'm not stuck in a rut. That's stuck in a rut in your painting process. You are stuck when you do the same thing, exactly the same thing over and over and over and over. Then you're in the donut hole. You miss the donut because you hit the hole. Conversely, if you're too creative and are doing crazy new things every time you turn around, every time you approach a painting, then you miss the donut because you're outside. And so the sweet spot in creativity is right in between. A little bit creative, not too creative, not too repetitive, not too boring, not too common. So that's, I think this, what I'm doing tonight is a really good example of that. It's what I'm doing is somewhat new to me, because I don't usually do another dark layer after this late in the game or after the fuzz layer. But the painting called for it, and I'm enjoying it. I really am having fun visually. So I'm not complaining. It's working. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. And without any announcement or fanfare, I'm going to go straight into the final edit layer. Okay, so final layer, the final edit layer, and that's an appropriate name for it because the editing entails. It's helpful. Appreciate that. Good to hear from you too, by the way. The final edit layer is as it sounds. It's at this point in the painting process where I really decide, like a film editor in the proverbial cutting room floor, right? This is the point at which I decide which bits of this painting get eliminated, of course, and they get eliminated by covering them up with opaque paint. Does that make sense? So that's why the term final edit is a good description. All right. Now, where to start? Three options. There used to be four. Now, one of the options used to be local color, but now I did that in the fuzz layer. One option is start with the sky, because that's sort of traditional oil painting. Start with the furthermost object and move forward. Landscape, sky, move forward. Number two is start with the focal point and then work out like rings of a target. And number three is start with the lightest, brightest, whitest thing and then grow dark from there. Like start with the thing that's closest to white. All right, so let me decide which of those. Silence, dead silence. While I think, Or start anywhere you want to. It's another way to put it. All right, I think I am actually going to start with the sky, but not up here sky. Sky down here in the focal part. Let's see. One of the questions is I seem to have three focal points in this painting. One, there's going to be a woman. She is not the focal point, but this area, the part of the porch right there. Then the car in the building and the front. And all of a sudden I'm going, oh man, those are kind of competing with each other. Well, I certainly don't want it to be the car. That's just there as a prop. Let's start here in the porch, where area fairly abstractly rendered, a woman sitting on a rocking chair on the porch. So there will be I also have a couple of pedestrians over here, and then of course a car, and two cars actually, one parked there, one coming toward us. Cars are very closely associated, of course, with human beings, so they carry some psychological weight as well, what I call a psychological focal point. So a car is a pretty significant psychological focal point. I'm mixing up colors over here, and I'm doing white, phthalo blue, and a little bit of Naples yellow. Naples yellow is like a yellow ochre light. All right, I might have the right color here, I'm not sure. And I'm certainly not following the photograph at this point. Let's zero in so you can see a little bit more accurately what I'm doing here. Again, good practice. Put down a mark and then mess it up in some way. All right, so first of all, you'll notice that I'm really, almost for the first time in this painting, I really have just laid in quite a sharp edge there, right? Why? Right, because this is focal-ish point, focal point-ish. So hard edges in the focal point, of course. I'm just gonna let that go for a while. I'm not sure that's the right color. I might come back and, you know, mix on the canvas. But I'm gonna let it go for now. One of the things I find myself teaching and talking about a lot these days is, as an artist, let's assume you're painting from a photograph for a moment. The same principles apply if you're painting on plein air, but let's just assume for the moment, let me talk in terms of photograph. You go out, as I did a couple weeks ago, this lovely little village called, used to be a village, now it's turning into a suburb of Raleigh, so it's growing like crazy, you know, but it's called Holly Springs. So I went to this little town and took pictures. Ran around town for 30 minutes with my phone and just clickety clickety click. Took a bunch of pictures, right? I took this one of these pictures is almost the first thing I took. My intuition saw this scene immediately, but I felt like, well, to be safe, I better take a bunch of other pictures. So I did, but my intuition was right. When I came back and looked at all my photographs carefully, sure enough, the very first scene that I shot ended up being this one, the correct one. All right, so after you've got the picture taken, after you got the picture shot and selected, right? I'm assuming if you're an artist and you paint from some pictures you take. All right, a very important mental process that we all need to go through, and I'm getting more adamant about making this very intentional, conscious, in a sense, almost out loud, talking to yourself out loud kind of thing. And that is, you need to decide, what is it in the photograph that is appealing to you? Or if you were there in person and you took the photograph for some reason, I'm assuming you've all had the experience that I have had. You take a bunch of pictures and you come back to, you know, to a sit down quiet place and you open up your phone or your computer or your iPad, whatever, and you start looking at all the pictures you took, and half of the pictures you go, man, why did I take that? All right, if you had that experience. All right, so let's just assume though that you may even remember why you took it. Well, that's what I'm saying. As artists, we need to go through I think a very conscious, self-aware process. Why did I take that picture? And you need to answer that question concretely, not abstractly. Well, because it made me feel. No feeling words. I don't want to hear any feeling words. It made me feel, because it gave me a sense of. Nope. That's not what I mean. That certainly may be true, that it made you feel such and such. By the way, I'm going to stop right there in the sky, the lowest layer of sky, and then come back and do these trees. As you can see, they need to be much, much lighter than they are, much paler than they are, and that's fine. Adding paleness, lightness to the painting is a big part of what this final edit layer is about. It's light, opaque colors. All right, so let's continue. Why you took the photograph. You have to ask, but more than that, you have, I feel like we as artists, I'm not preaching at you, I'm preaching to myself. We, the artists, we have to get really in touch with what it was that drew us to this scene. And sometimes you have to think really hard. So, for instance, in this particular painting, what was it? It was this yellow house with a red roof. I'm a sucker for red roofs, porches. I know this about myself. I really am. Not, of course, I think it's a good thing to be a sucker for those things. Those are powerful. I mean, just a seeing through a hole like that is powerful visually for everybody, whether they know it or not. Okay, so that's big. Street lights, especially traditional, old-fashioned street lights like that. I'm sure it's not old, it's new, but it's made to look old, you know. And of course, colonial pillars, all of that is good. One of the things I want to point out is this sign here, this hanging, I don't know what you call that, where they're all hanging and there's 4 pieces, right? Somehow, for some reason, I am aware of the fact that that sign and that shape, it has to do with positive and negative space. It's called rhythm, by the way, in the principles of design. One of the principles is rhythm. Bum, 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 bum. It's a repeated, regular, more or less regular pattern. It's called often. The principles of design are not nearly as universal or locked in as the elements of design: line, shape, color, design, value, texture. 6. Some people add form. I disagree with that one. I think shape, colors, covers form, but be that as it may. The elements of design are pretty well established and universally recognized. The principles of design are things like balance, tension, rhythm, repetition. I'm forgetting. Like I said, they're not nearly as locked in. Anyway, this is one of the principles of design is rhythm. So that's all. I'm just saying that I'm very aware that little detail is part of what drew me to this overall scene. I'm going to practice a little bit of what I preach right here. I'm changing my color green on my brushes. I just added some yellow ochre to this so that these trees over here are a different color. I talked about that last night. I don't know if I dare say it again. Do I dare say it again? Something I learned from Thomas Kincaid 25 years ago. 30 years ago, maybe. All right, I'm going to stop there. I'm not done with either with that sky or with that trees, but that's close enough for a first layer. I want to build all this up a little bit, build it up together. So I think I'm going to tackle that the little house. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a public building. I can't tell by looking. It could be a private residence. I sort of doubt it. I think it's probably some kind of business or public building. And I did walk past it, but now I can't remember. I didn't do any research before I started painting tonight. Anyway, it's a pale yellow. Forgive me, let me drink a little bit here. Here's hoping you couldn't hear me drinking. And a little yellow building with a red tin roof. And red tin roofs are, I mean, anything red, of course, packs a visual punch. I'm mixing up a bunch of colors. Naphthol, crimson, titanium white, of course. Pretty much every color I use in the final edit layer has titanium white in it. Either that or yellow ochres or Naples yellow are just as opaque as white, so I can use those instead. But everything in the final edit layer is opaque. Now, hang on just a second. I called them opaque. A little too dark. The paint itself, so to speak, is opaque. If I applied it thickly enough, it will be or would be opaque. But actually, most of what I'm applying is not quite opaque. So more technically speaking, it is I'm just messing up. That's all I'm doing. No rhyme or reason. With that little bit of messing, I was not trying to achieve realism. Okay, that was just pure abstract messing. Now, before I leave the roof, I'm going to do my old trick. This is a practice I definitely adhere to. Whenever you put a color down, I'm going to exaggerate. You always come back and put a slightly lighter version of that color on top of some of what you just put down. Learn that trick. Learn that little practice, and your paintings will take an instant leap forward. Okay, done. I may come back. Of course, I don't mean that I'm done. I might be, but I'm not positive that I'm done with that red roof, which of course, as you can see in the distance, it's far enough away, it appears pink in the painting, of course. But I'm done for now. Again, I've got now the sky, the trees, and the pink roof, the red roof, all up sort of to the same level of completion. And as you can tell, I've decided to really focus in the early stages of my final edit layer. I've decided to focus on all of this, the focal point, the focal zone. How about that? It's certainly not be a bit of a stretch to call it a focal point. A little bit wide. Okay, so now I have a warm pale yellow. Some of you might be saying, aren't all yellows warm? And the answer is no. There's warm yellows and cool yellows, just as there are warm blues and cool blues. Please find me giving that lecture somewhere else, because I don't want to give it again right now. Ooh, yes indeed. At the bottom of the roof, there is a fascia board, which I think is visually important. I was thinking about doing that with a palette knife. I might come back and do it again with a palette knife, but for now, I'm just doing it with a brush. I'm using paint that is quite thick and goopy here, and I'm letting it stay goofy. Oh, not goofy. I'm letting it stay goopy. Good opportunity for me to mention In the final edit layer, virtually every mark that I make is a one touch and done mark. Virtually no blending, no scrubby, no brushy, virtually none of that in this final edit layer. That would be a good thing for you to notice if you're a early mid-journey painter. No brushy, right? Okay, looking at the photograph. He says, I'm going to pick up a piece of cardboard. And, oh, didn't work at all. There we go. All right. I don't know what that is. It's just a vertical pole, vertical mark. I happen to know. Making it sound like it's some real smart thing. I happen to know that cities, towns, villages, street scenes, there's a veritable forest of vertical marks on all city streets. Signs, street signs, parking meters, trees, fence posts, posts holding up the trees, all kinds of things. Just mark it down. Just as I said, a veritable forest, if you will, of vertical. This one over here is a street light. Yep. I think I might turn this one into a street light too. Just put a little extra blob at the top of it. Scratch a little bit, do another blob on top of that. Same thing over here. All right, having done that, I'm going to leave that building for the moment and come over here to this building. It looks kind of like a church. I don't think it is. I think it's a courthouse or a municipal building of some kind, but it's that, you know, that early American colonial. I don't know my architecture quite well enough to know if it's early American or colonial. I think it's colonial architecture. Same colored paint that I had over there on the small house. Palette knife, I want a really sharp edge right there. If you've followed me at all, hopefully you've heard me say the essence of good painting, not the essence of a good painting. Now I'm talking about the essence of the verb painting, the act of doing painting. The essence of good painting is making interesting marks. And that principle, that concern, applies to every single layer of the painting process. But it really, really, really applies to this opaque, light opaque highlights final edit layer. I'm way more concerned about the exact mark. I mean that in the abstract sense of the word. I'm more concerned about the texture, the brush strokes, the marks, the literal marks that my brushes make. I'm more concerned about the texture, is a word I'd like to use right now, of each stroke than I am about similitude, accuracy, detail, realism. Now, I mean, back up. This is a realistic painting, right? So let's be clear. The hard work of drawing, and hopefully I didn't screw up too bad. The hard work of drawing is done. So within that context, having already accomplished the task of accurate or careful drawing, now that that's done, that's behind me, I am much more concerned about brushmanship, about texture, about how the paint actually gets laid, what it looks like, and what it looks like kind of up close. And this, in fact, is the part that it's hard for a reproduction, any kind of print, no matter how perfectly or carefully we photograph and edit the photograph in Photoshop and so forth. It's really hard, very, very difficult to capture the three-dimensionality of the paint. That is, the paint is literally, as you know, sticking up off the canvas. I don't know how many microns. I'm not a good estimator of microns. How about you? But I think you know what I'm talking about. You don't need to see it. That the paint sticks up off, and that's a big part of what I mean when I say I'm as concerned with and I certainly don't want to be overworked. That would be. So once again, even now, even in the final edit layer, being careful not to be too careful. Let me give you another description of my painting process that might help you a little bit. Again, of course, you don't have to paint like me. You can use me if you want as a study, as an example, as a practice for yourself. But this principle it might just apply to you, and not just to me. And not the principle, the description, I should say, the way I'm going to describe. My painting process could be described as every single layer that I do, or phases of the painting. Every single layer of the painting process, if you analyzed it, is quite abstract, quite messy, quite imprecise, quite abstract. And yet, they're all on the canvas together at the end. The effect is quite representational, quite realistic, quite accurate. And again, you don't have to paint like me, of course. But you might consider making, you'd have to say, well, that's pretty abstract. That's pretty messy. That's not very accurate, and so forth, right? But voila. Now I've got this pale orange color on my brushes over here on the front of that building, and I've got almost the same exact color, so I'm going to use the same color over here on these steps. And now, since I just used that color, now I'm going to do my normal practice of mixing up a slightly lighter version. He says, some of you will remember that my titanium white paint is almost always, looking for a tube here, is almost always alkyd fast dry. You see that? So it's plain old oil paint, nothing fancy. It just is a faster drying version of oil paint. That allows me to apply fairly thick bits of paint in the last stages, in the later stages of the, without worrying that it's going to take 3 or 4. That was a mistake I made one time, maybe 15 years ago. The heck with that. I did some impasto, some thick paint in the later stages of a painting, and it literally took 6 weeks. And it wasn't even that extreme, in my opinion, but it took 6 weeks to dry. That's ridiculous, says I. So next chance I got, I bought some alkyd. I was familiar with alkyd paints, so I didn't have to do a lot of research. But that's been the case then for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. I don't remember how long. Titanium white is one. Heard that or discovered that. You might have experienced it and not realized exactly what it was you were experiencing. So now you know. Different color. In fact, I've heard, I am not an expert, I don't know, but I heard years ago from somebody who seemed like they knew what they were talking about, that, as a matter of fact, that Van Dyke Brown technically never dries. That's interesting, eh? Again, I don't know that it's true. I've been told that. You can look it up and see if you find any corroboration of that. Oops, I don't like the little bit of light that I just got there because of the way I used the brush. The heel of the brush down here has some of the lighter color in it. All right, that's enough. That's good enough there, I think. I'll do a little more, not much. I'm actually, this might be the difference between Dan Nelson at this stage of my life versus Dan Nelson years ago. Number one, I'm not under a killer deadline like I was so often when I was an illustrator. And I'm happy to say I carried a lot of that healthy work ethic into my career as a fine arts painter. But I'm not under a killer deadline right now, as I said, and I find myself in one of two things: a little bit insecure about some of my decisions. I think I'm okay so far. I'm finding myself just a little bit like, I don't know. There's a lot of things that are going on here that I don't quite want to. I don't know. And that film, but it's been a long, good, productive, hard day, and it's not over at 9:30. But I think I might just paint for a few more minutes. And look forward to coming back and tackling this with fresh eyes. Now, not tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow evening I will be broadcasting. I'm doing another wedding about 2 hours from home in Wilmington, North Carolina. And as you know, broadcasting during weddings is always a bit of a trick, because the band is usually, or the DJ, either one, is playing copyrighted music, and I get in all kinds of trouble with YouTube for broadcasting when the band is playing music. You already know about that. So we'll see. But I will broadcast as much as I can. Do a little bit of this car before I go. Got an old pink haze pie greeting all these people. Thank you, Brenda. Good to see you. Pink haze pie. No, I've not. I've come close. I have not been lecturing on beauty today. Thanks for asking. I have not gotten into any rants at all. Boy, I'm trying to think where. I have not been, what's the word, idle on the subject, Mr. Pink, or Mrs. Pink. Forgive me. I forget at the moment whether you're Mr. or Mrs. Pink Haze Pie. I've actually been working on that subject. When I say working, I don't know. Some of you are going to say, I don't. You can't. Whatever. I'm a weird guy. I journal a lot. I spend a decent part of many days, not every single day, but sitting down with my journal, getting in touch with myself, God, the universe, whatever else you want to call it. And I also, when I go out for a walk, I used to jog more, but now it's mostly walking. I do the same thing. I do a lot of journaling. And when I say working on the subject, that just means it's come up a lot, and I've journaled about it quite a bit. My thoughts, usually fairly philosophical thoughts. Anyway, I have not been idle, so I'm not sure that I'm ready to launch into it yet. I will say, see, you're provoking me. As the years go by, I'm becoming more and more a convinced, I might be wrong, but convinced that beauty is an authentic entity, is a real thing. Now that puts me at great odds with the overwhelming opinion. I'll go ahead and tell you, just in case you don't. It puts me at great odds with the overwhelming majority of artists and art philosophers and art critics and art professors of the 20th century. Okay. And I could be wrong. Foolish is the person who doesn't admit they could be wrong. It's my feeling. But I'm inclined to think that beauty is real. In other words, that there's an objectivity about it, that it's a real thing, and that it exists beyond the mere subjective experience of the viewer, we'll call it, in the case of visual art, although the same would apply to the hearer when it comes to like musical art or oral art and so on and so forth. Let's just stick with visual. So I am inclined to think that it's an authentic, real, objective reality. And of course, and I've argued both sides on this. I can argue the other side, but that's all I'm going to say at this point. I think beauty is real, and that's certainly not a lecture. Pink haze pie. It is. I'm still going, aren't I? It is certainly connected to one's broader worldview. There's no question in my mind about that. Either in my case, I know it's connected to my worldview, and other people who say that beauty is not an objective reality. The ones who are philosophically sophisticated enough would acknowledge that they are being consistent with their worldview. People who are not accustomed to philosophical discourse will look at us like we're stupid in the head, wonder what we're talking about. But anyway, those of us who argue about such things. So I believe that beauty is real, an objective reality. I experienced it. The other side would say, no, there is no such thing as beauty. It's only a subjective inner human. How can you say what's beauty? Blah blah blah. Anyway, I'm not going to answer that because I can't answer that. But I believe I experienced it again today when I was out walking. Walked about 3 miles. Yay for me. That's a little bit longer than my usual these days. It was great fun with my phone where I can record all of pages and pages and pages of thoughts and reflections. I came around the corner and the sun was hitting the side of a house. And again, my detractors would say, no, see, what you're describing is just 100% your subjective response to visual stimuluses. I know that argument. I've heard it. I've argued it. I disagree with it. The straightness of the lines of the house is a form of beauty. In fact, I don't know if any of you are C.S. Lewis fans, in his space trilogy, the third book of the space trilogy, I forget, was the protagonist. The hero's name, was it Ransom? I know it's Ransom in the middle book, or the first 2 books. I think it's still Ransom, I'm not sure. Anyway, somehow the bad guys, my memory is so vague I can't remember, but the bad guys capture the good guy, the hero, the protagonist, and they imprison him in a weird house. And the weird house is, he's a prisoner, as I remember right, he can't get out, but this house is designed to drive a sane person crazy. That's in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy, the last book, That Hideous Strength. And it's designed, their hope was that they could drive anybody berserk by putting him in this house, where every door, window, roof, ceiling, stair, and so forth was almost an appropriate 90 degrees, but not quite. Every single thing was off in just a slightly different way. So there was no regularity, no predicting, no We're going to drive this person crazy. But in the book, their trick backfired. It actually had the very opposite effect on very fuzzy memory. So somebody who's read it long since I can tell me better to repeat the story. But anyways, I remember it had the very opposite effect, because rather than convincing him that he was nuts and that 90-degree angles were purely an arbitrary invention of blah, 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 it convinced him the very opposite, that in fact the offness, the wrongness, the slight imperfections in this house all proved to him that there was such a thing, Plato, that there was such a thing as, I'll just call it in this case, architectural perfection, architectural correctness, that did exist objectively in the outside world. Again, Plato, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. So it backfired. It makes me think, I'll give just one more example along these lines. I don't know how many of you would remember way back in the 70s, so I just eliminated half of my audience or more. There was an airline company in America called Braniff Airlines. Some of you might remember Braniff Airlines. And they thought it would be cool to hire a really cool, really groovy, world-class famous artist to do paintings to go on the sides of all their jets. Okay, does anybody remember this? So in fact, they hired the world famous French, I believe, Alexander Calder. You can just look him up, Alexander Calder. And if you want to look up Alexander Calder Braniff Airlines, you'll see the whole thing. And sure enough, and Alexander Calder was a very much a objective, non-objective, abstract painter and sculptor. So they had all these big jets carrying passengers around the world, painted with crazy, wild, as I remember, mostly primary color blobs of color on the side of the jet. What is really funny is that right in that one example of artwork, and I don't dislike Alexander Calder at all. In fact, I quite like his work, and I actually think I think generally he is an artist who works with beauty. So he was not one of those ugly, as there are many, he was not one of those ugly modern or contemporary or 20th century artists. He was actually quite concerned, I think, with beauty. Even though he's abstract and his sculptures are very abstract. And but the funny part is, see, one of the common claims of 20th century modern art, and I'm using the term like not like an academic, just in the general man on the street, the way an ordinary person would say, modern art. Whoops, have I lost you here? That looks kind of nice right there. Just did a little blush of blue, and the number on this house is just large enough to be 205, right? Yep, just large enough to be rendered in the painting. Any smaller, it would be too small, but it's big enough here that it'll actually be legible. One of the common mantras of the modern artist, using the term in the colloquial sense of the word, ordinary person on the street sense of the word, is they claim over and over and over that modern art, as opposed to that old-fashioned, yucky, beautiful, realistic stuff, William Bouguereau especially is the one they hated more than anybody, that their abstract work showed the true underlying, philosophical, underlying realities, not physical, but underlying philosophical realities of existence. That is one of, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. I think I'm, woohoo! So that was one of their ubiquitous claims. Oh no, we're not showing a woman's beautiful body or face or a beautiful landscape or blah, 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 blah. No, we're showing the deeper. I want to go into a sarcastic tone of voice, but I'll restrain myself. And we want to show the deeper truths of reality. So the funny part is, Alexander Calder, now I'm not sure that he ever said that, but his ilk, his type would say things like that, would have said things like that. That he was showing the deeper, so deep, darling. You knew I couldn't resist, right? Acting up a little bit. All right. The deeper realities of life. And yet they painted this deep reality on the sides of a jumbo jet. Or whatever kind of jet it was, 747, 727, 707, whatever. A Boeing, Lockheed, whatever. Northrop Grumman, I don't know. Anyway, Boeing, one of these big airplanes, right? The funny part is the contrast was so stark. Big, amorphous, perfectly precise, scientifically aerodynamic sides of a jet. If the makers, let's say Boeing, if Boeing had decided to go with Alexander Calder's philosophy of reality, if they had built their planes according to the philosophy of the artist whose work was they were showcasing on their planes, every plane would have crashed. It wouldn't have crashed. Maybe at the end of the run, it would never have gotten off the ground. Anyway, just so sort of like C.S. Lewis's story. That's, to me, I've never heard anybody else make that comparison. There are few of us old enough now to remember this irony, but it was very much an irony. Such a mashup of worldviews. The scientists know what reality is, and of course, yeah, don't try to do a philosophical end run around me and say, well, Dan, you don't understand blah blah blah. No, just because I'm not going into it doesn't mean I don't understand the philosophical conversation. I just am not going to go in, not going to take the debate. Okay. By the way, one thing, for years and years, when I've been painting like this and philosophizing, consistently, somebody will say it. They'll say, stick to painting, it's what you're good at. Stop, leave the philosophizing. And I would protest sometimes, say, well, no, I'm actually a philosopher who paints, not a painter who philosophizes. Never expecting that, in fact, my job, my lifestyle would actually switch as quickly as it did last year. That's why I'm no longer doing daily art adventures, because I'm not painting every day. Why? Because now I'm back to my true calling, which is philosopher. That's pretty true. And I am writing a lot, and I look forward to whenever the right time is for some of that writing to be released upon a poor, unsuspecting world. Anyway, just kind of funny, because I used to say that a lot. I'm really a philosopher who paints, and people would say, quit the philosophizing and just paint. Well, anyway. So here we are. I actually am a philosopher. How about that? All right, that's as far as I want to go with that. Pink Haze Pie, that was certainly not a complete lecture on beauty, but a little tiny sideways glance at it anyway. Thanks for asking. I'll do more later. I'm going to do more because it's going to come out whether I want to or not. want to cover up more. There's too much yellow underpainting poking through there. All right, I am indeed. I'm happy enough with what I've done tonight. I know that when I come back Monday at the earliest, I'll see a number of things that I want to modify slightly, let alone finish. But I don't want to, you know, this is 75, 80% finished. And this might be just also 85. I don't know. By the way, that's a good tip, by the way. Paint from the bullseye, from the center of your target. This is one way to paint. Paint from the center of your target, that is the focal point, outward. Don't start out in the outer rings and then come in. Start in the inner ring and go out, because that's the only way you'll know how much energy should be, energy should be in these outer rings of the target, so to speak. All right, let me see what else you guys are talking about before I hang up and go practice my music. Laughing at you all. Jane, if you're good at drawing. Yep, that's right, Jane. The soft pastels are the word is direct. What you see is what you get. What you push is what is very direct. That's right, one of the most direct mediums there is. And you're exactly right. That's the beauty of those. Thank you, Pink Ace Pie. C.S. Lewis would agree with me. I know he would. That's right. Jane. And I went all night and didn't use the word crap. Then you go and do it on my on my chat. Shit, what's this world coming to? Sorry, you did not hear that. I can see YouTube's gonna dock me for inappropriate language. Oh my goodness, Jeff Koons. Oh, you guys, you're just a hoot. Hello, Franz. Good, I'll do more Pink Haze Pie. You know I will. Jane, I love it. You're being a lot more blunt. I was being rather nice, wasn't I? Thank you. Actually, I grew up in Grand Rapids. I grew up as a little kid in Grand Rapids, Michigan, moved away, and then came back to college. So it's Grand Rapids, Michigan is the closest thing I have to a hometown. And when I came back, the Calder was a huge red metal thing in the heart of downtown Raleigh. And it's not ugly. It's fun to look at. You know, one of the struggles is, I mean, are you guys familiar with, I think it's Bernini, the marble sculptor? I think that's right. Just Google Bernini and start, I mean, the stuff that these guys did in solid marble just defies, it's just jaw-dropping, unbelievable. And is an Alexander Calder on a par with, there's my answer. Are you kidding? Not even close. Not even light years. Anyway, so it's not bad, but anyway. Look like a dump truck in Paris. Hello, Franz, thank you. Jane, don't call her his crap. I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, whatever. Anyway. All right, thanks, guys. Y'all are the best. It's so much fun being with you.